Hello and welcome to Pearl Magazine. Unemployment in Hong Kong has soared to a 15-year high at 6.2% as the coronavirus continues to hammer business. That's almost 250,000 unemployed workers. With the coming of the third wave, many of those in the food and beverage, retail and tourism industry are getting battered even harder. Verna has worked as a full-time singer in Hong Kong since 1992. With years-long contracts at hotels, suddenly having no work since March has been daunting. Tonight is the night before the 6 p.m. curfew takes effect. It's one of 2 days a week she gets to work.
It was really hard to find a job, really hard to find a gig because of the pandemic. All my events were already canceled. I'm just really lucky that I got this one.
Twice a week, she works as a server at lunchtime and singer in the evening. She got the job through a friend who works here. The owners enjoy live music, so the chance to get someone like Verna was a stroke of luck for both them and her.
Verna is the first actual real professional. That voice is very special. And our guests loves her.
And she can sing almost all the requests by the customer.
Jack Wong has had this restaurant in Tai Po for almost 20 years. That evening, he was worried about how the place and their staff would fare with a curfew taking effect. The restaurant relies largely on the dinner crowd, which makes up 2/3 of their business.
We still trying to find other way of increasing our revenue and trying to give the part-time employees so they don't hurt us bad by having certain type of extra like takeaway and special discount. We are prepared for kind of a major loss through this time, but we're still hoping that with very loyal staff and guests that we can go through this together and keep the pain as low as possible for everybody, including our staff.
Verna will continue working as a server at Jack's twice a week during lunch, but the singing ended that evening.
I have always been a dreamer, followed visions of my own. I believe. I really love singing. That's my passion. Yeah. Singing is my passion. Yeah. It makes me feel. I mean, it makes my emotion. I can put everything, all my emotions, happy, if I'm sad, I can put everything in there.
Are you able to forget your troubles a little bit?
Of course, I forget my troubles when I'm singing. Makes me feel more satisfied. Mm-hmm. Especially when the crowd, when they're appreciating my talent.
Before March, Verna was a regular hotel employee. She had her MPF, leave, and health benefits. She worked every day doing what she loved while making a good living.
We have lots of jobs, gigs. It's like we're having happy hour gig, we still have the prime time gig, and we still have the after hour gigs. During the time I used to work in hotels, I also have some other gigs or events. That's why I earned a little bit more than my usual salary.
1 month ago was the first time since March Verna was able to get more than 2 days of part-time work.
Especially now, like this week, after the curfew has been implemented, everything was totally gone.
Yeah, I know. You went from, it's okay, it's okay.
It's okay.
She has 3 children. Her husband is a police officer in the Philippines. She also takes care of her mother, who's sick. She's the breadwinner of the family.
I still have to send money to the Philippines. Most of my savings have been already used. My husband is a policeman, but even though he's earning money, we still need to pay everything. We had the loans, the car loans, the rental in the Philippines, everything.
March was particularly difficult. Verna had no income at all. She had to renegotiate her rent on a flat she shares with her oldest son, who also lost his job. She even used up her 2 months' deposit to pay her rent. She now spends her days looking for work, but with an overflow of unemployed fighting for the same jobs, there's a lot of competition.
I've been applying in different restaurants as a server, but there's a lot of competition because, of course, they would prefer to hire those who have more experience. I've sent a lot of applications in different companies. I had the interview, one of the company, and they just told me that they're just gonna message me again. They're just gonna call me back, and they're just gonna email me or whatever. I'm getting used of applying and do not expect any response anymore. I'm still looking for a floor staff, server, cashier, but for now they're not really hiring. We're not really hiring, so either cleaner or a dishwasher, but no.
Yeah. Any responses?
No. Yeah, actually some of them are responding.
It's okay. Just take your time.
Yeah, sorry. They are responding, but of course they're not hiring. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry. It's been very hard, really.
Verna is depressed. She misses her family and her future is uncertain, but she sees few options.
I had to talk with my family while dealing with this depression. I had to talk with my friends. I would love to go back to Philippines, but in this time of situation, I don't think it's more. I think Hong Kong is still the best place to stay. Right now, I would rather stay in Hong Kong. We still have the benefits as a Hong Kong resident.
As a permanent resident, she was able to get the $10,000 handout, and she's now applying for the housing subsidy. She's also seeking help from NGOs that are assisting those in need. And of course, she continues her job search for anything: server, washer, cleaner.
I'm still hoping that it will be back to normal. But not as the one before. Like, I can sing every night. No. I'm not expecting that one. At least I could have a full-time job. I could pay my bills. And I could send some money for my son.
The unemployment rate for the food and beverage sector in Hong Kong recently hit 14.7%. That's close to the post-SARS high. Economist Tommy Wu says those living below the poverty level in Hong Kong could jump to 21.5%.
This has to do with the fact that unemployment is actually mostly in the lower income group. For instance, in retail, restaurants, and in accommodation and also constructions. So, if these workers lost their jobs and if they belong to low-income families, so we will definitely likely see a boost in the number of households that are actually under the poverty line.
Government figures show unemployment rates of those involved in decoration, repair and maintenance for buildings, the import-export trade, warehousing and transportation have increased to multi-year highs. With the latest guidelines for the third wave continually changing, restaurants are trying to figure out how to survive the limited opening hours. Part-timers like Verna have become collateral damage.
I need to pray. We couldn't do anything about it because it's not nobody's fault. It's the nature. It's everybody's suffering, not just me, everyone.
Up next, while the government has given incentives to businesses to keep staff employed, and some corporates pledging to keep staff until the end of 2020, hiring freezes and redundancies are still happening as businesses try to lower their cost base. This when Pearl Magazine returns. Welcome back. Those in these services industries are hardest hit, but they're not the only ones. With cost base an issue for many companies, even corporates aren't immune to redundancies and hiring freezes as COVID packs a punch to companies' bottom lines.
It's been just over a month since I left my former company. I was working for one of the big four consultancy firms as head of fintech. It was a surprise to me. I understand the economic environment, but I think the area that I was in, I knew that would be accelerated because of COVID and because more companies are now looking at their digital strategies. So I think for my role in particular, it was a surprise.
Avril Ray has worked for large corporates for over 20 years. She came to Hong Kong 10 years ago and was with her last company for just a year. The role she had was a newly created position. With a background in engineering, IT, and business development, she should have been bulletproof, but COVID still managed to get her in her pocket. So she took to social media.
I posted publicly on LinkedIn my situation because I have quite a big network and everybody has been amazing. I didn't realize how much reach the LinkedIn post would have, and it actually got to over 136,000 people around the world. So I think there was a very good response, and so I spent the last few weeks following up on those contacts and existing people reaching out to me, new people my post resonated with them.
She says she's had a lot of meetings, but nothing has come through yet. As a foreigner, she feels using her network is key to finding a job, since most recruiters have boxes to tick and most require bilingual or trilingual in Cantonese and Mandarin, which she is not. Recruitment agencies are also down as demand to fill roles has dropped.
We're currently around 38% down on the normal active jobs we'd be working on in the market. So that's fairly material. When COVID came, Hong Kong was already in a recession. So you've got a hit when the city's already a little bit down, and that has an exacerbated impact.
Yeah, you've had some really senior positions. Could that also be a liability?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are definitely looking at saving costs, and when they're hiring more junior positions. I think when you reach my level, the volume of jobs is definitely less, so it takes more time.
She says she's busier now than when she was working, and she's saying yes to everything, keeping her options open and meeting both big companies and startups. Leaving Hong Kong isn't an option she's ready to take just yet.
I've been here for 10 years and I'd like to leave when I'm ready to leave rather than having to leave. And I enjoy living here. The dogs are settled here. We are able to fly to our respective families.
Sharmini Wainwright confirms that those with a background like Avril's are in high demand.
Technology and digital roles and job types have been in huge demand, and it really amazed us. We came back in March, and the one practice area for us that kept being able to close deals and place candidates was our technology and digital practices. So encouraging to see a very fast adaptation to what the new market was.
She adds that while there have been a few layoffs from corporates, especially those who've pledged to keep their people until the end of 2020, we may not see the worst of it until next year.
Should global economies not return to a rate that we expect, will there be a spill early next year of candidates in the market? So I would say it's probably more early next year than the latter part of this year. Because the other thing is you've also got a lot of the big banks, so the big employers globally saying we pledge not to let our people go during COVID. Great, that's exactly the sort of gestures we need. But when 2021 comes, perhaps things need to change.
Avril says she's giving herself 3 months to find a job. In the meantime, she's trying to manage the family budget.
Being the main breadwinner in my family, it does put a lot of stress in terms of making sure you can pay the bills. Fortunately, my landlady has been very gracious and has given us a reduction for a few months to help us, through this period. So, but yeah, it's definitely a stressful time. We have a loan and we have our rent. They're probably the biggest outgoings. We have a helper for the dogs. We don't, want to put her in a situation where she may have to go home. She's part of our family, so we're trying to make sure that we can try and keep her as well.
The loan is for a bar her husband has been trying to open since last year, but the protests put that on hold. He had hoped to open it in January when COVID hit. He hired a manager to start in March.
It was around April, May, and it was right when Mrs. Lam suspended all licenses. So we legally were not allowed to open, and we did not. And so I think we got about 3 days in before those licenses were suspended.
Damien says he spent about $2 million on the place so far since he got it a year and a half ago. The current restrictions on bars prohibit him from opening.
We can deliver alcohol for parties or private stuff. We get to deliver to junks that don't supply the alcohol. People we know call us and we supply it to them, which is great. It gives us some income. Every little bit helps.
So far, he's managed to get 2 small subsidies from the government. He's hoping to qualify for the larger subsidy once his full license comes through.
You've got to continue to pay the rent. You've got to continue to pay suppliers. You've got to keep electricity on. Otherwise, all your fridges turn off and everything goes sour. So yeah, we just soldier on and best we can.
With the third wave of COVID extending the shutdown of bars, he's looking to when he can finally open and still sees a silver lining for the place.
I think it's changed people's thinking, and a lot of people are thinking the what if. And I don't think there's going to be there's the line in the sand, COVID-19's finished, we can all soldier on. So I like to think that a small venue like this may actually thrive in that, because people won't want to go somewhere where there's 80 to 100 people they don't know. So that local mentality may serve us well.
Right now, there's an average of 750 monthly bankruptcy petitions for the first half of this year. That is up from 720 last year. If this third wave is prolonged, economists predict this number will continue to rise.
I think with the third wave, it's possible to see that the government will still roll out more stimulus. There is still some funding that sits in the previous program, like the anti-epidemic fund, maybe about 260 million Hong Kong dollars that were supposed to be allocated to the tourism sector, and that's still unused. So maybe they can use at least part of that funding to help the retailers and restaurants, especially, that are suffering at the moment.
He expects the unemployment rate to go up to 6.5%, but he sees the innovation and technology sector in Hong Kong growing, especially with the development of the Greater Bay Area.
Hong Kong and China continues to integrate, then a lot of the big tech companies in Shenzhen can cooperate with, say, the universities or some of the tech companies in Hong Kong, which are very good at research and development. They have been doing that for the past few years, but I think with the continued integration, there will be a lot more of this kind of activities, and that would certainly benefit Hong Kong.
Some see a recovery looming in Hong Kong, with mainland companies leading the way as they emerge from the pandemic.
Over the last 6 to 8 weeks, China has slowly got back on its feet. We're seeing very much a V-shaped recovery. The hiring appetite on the Hong Kong side for these PRC headquartered businesses has really picked up. Right, so they are out there, they are looking for good talent, and they're looking to resume their expansion plans here in Hong Kong.
She says that she sees the financial sector remaining resilient and a demand for roles in procurement.
During any downturn, you will always see organisations investing in their procurement function. How do we get greater transparency levels over our costs and our spend? So that's been really good, and a lot of very senior placements being made in that area.
Aside from the pandemic, the new security law is impacting employment as some tech companies are concerned their data may be affected. This means some jobs may be moved out of Hong Kong.
the global tech companies and also the local companies that serve these big tech companies may see some downsizing or reduce their presence in Hong Kong because there are issues with data protection or because of compliance issue. They need to, on the one hand, they need to comply with obviously the regulations in other countries or globally, but then they could probably at risk of violating the national security law. So there is still lots of uncertainty.
But he says the upside of the security law and the international reactions to it means the Hong Kong exchange will see many more IPOs from Chinese companies.
I think the national security law would have a medium-term impact because in the short term, we see that there are still lots of capital inflows coming in, lots of IPOs, big IPOs coming in the rest of the year. So at least for the financial sector side of things seems to be doing well.
But for many businesses and job seekers, it's a fight for survival as policies around the pandemic continue to change on a daily basis. That's our show for tonight. Next week, we continue to look at the prospect of finding jobs for those leaving school. And for those leaving Hong Kong, why saying goodbye isn't easy. Thanks for watching. Good night.